Namo Buddhaya. Hello everyone. So after a couple of weeks of 2 week hiatus, we are back with the weekly sutta readings. I apologize for missing out on the past couple of weeks. Haven't got a lot of excuses. It's just the first week I was away in the Highlands, and the second week I just plain forgot. These things happen. So we are back to the second sutta of the Majjima Nikaya still for the fifth time. The Sabbasava Sutta, also all the taints, called all the taints. So just a little recap. The asavas are called the influxes. So that includes the kama asava, the influx of sense desire, the bhava asrava, the influx of craving for existence, and the avijja asava, the influx of ignorance. And it's these three asavas, so-called influxes, that keep us stuck in the cycle of samsara, stuck in dukkha. Once we cut these influxes off is when we can arrive at the unconditioned called nibbana, the nibbana dhatu. We are able to experience, witness the supreme peace and happiness of enlightenment of nibbana. So the methods were abandoned by seeing, abandoned by that was the first one, abandoned by seeing, which is sort of like seeing reality as it is, sort of vipassana bhavana, the meditation. So the second one was abandoned by restraining, so indriya samvara. I went into detail on that. And the third one is abandoned by using, so using properly, using your requisites properly, by applying wisdom, yoniso manasikara, when we use things. And the fourth one was enduring, abandoned by enduring, just by building a strength of will. And the fifth one was abandoned by avoiding, which is where we stopped off last time. So that abandoned by avoiding is pertaining to just knowing the dangers in things like wild elephants and wild horses and snakes and cesspits and sewers, and how we wisely abandon these things, because obviously you don't want to run into a wild elephant or fall into a cesspit. And in the same way, we should regard associating with bad friends and finding good people to be around. So we often chant the Mangala Sutta in our daily chanting, and also in blessings is when we go asevana cha balanam panditanam cha sevana puja cha pujaniyanam etang mangalamuttamang. So that's what he's saying. It's avoid the company of unsuitable people and find the company of good people. And this is something that we find across a lot of faiths. The Quran mentions the importance of having good friends, and so does the Bible. And this is the same in Buddhism. It's like the good companions are necessary, and the more you avoid people who get up to no good with you, the better your life will be. But this is sort of hard to understand for a lot of young people, especially young men and young women as well, I guess. It's bad friends are much easier to find, and also you're young, so they could be more fun to hang out with. I mean, I had good friend when I was young, but I didn't really like their company because I thought it was boring. I would pretty much preferred I much preferred the ones who were leading me towards unwholesome things, towards degradation. But that's, I guess, that's part of growing up. But it's better if you catch it on early on. And there are some people who are very lucky to catch it on early on. They develop a lot of wisdom at a young age, and they gain a lot of benefit from it, both worldly benefit and spiritual benefit. So that's where we stopped off, and then we will start off with the sixth method, which is to abandon by removing. I think in Pali it's called the Vinodana Pahatabhasa. So we will start with a homage to the Lord Buddha before we start reading. Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Taints to be abandoned by removing. What taints, bhikkhus, should be abandoned by removing? Here, a bhikkhu, reflecting wisely, does not tolerate an arisen thought of sensual desire. He abandons it, removes it, does away with it, annihilates it. He does not tolerate an arisen thought of ill will. He does not tolerate an arisen thought of cruelty. He does not tolerate an arisen evil, unwholesome states. He abandons them. He removes them, does away with them, annihilates them. While taints, vexation, and fever might arise in one who does not remove these thoughts, there are no taints, vexations, or fever in one who removes them. These are called the taints that should be abandoned by removing. So this is a very important factor in our practice of the Dhamma, in our navigation of life, in also our formal meditation, because being being the conditioned worldlings that we are, being the victims of karma that we are, being the products of our past actions and our inclinations of thinking, our habits and our thinking patterns. We are made up of these things. Therefore, we will experience thoughts. Thoughts will arise that are not wholesome. Thoughts such as cruelty, hatred, ill will, thoughts of sense desire, thoughts of greed, and these things are common in most of us. And it's not so pleasant to talk about or think about, to think of ourselves in this way, but it is a reality of our life. It's just how we are made. And the Buddhist path is designed in order to reduce these things and get rid of them. So when in our meditation, sometimes we may come across thoughts. So we may take the object of an enemy, and the mind focuses on this person that we do not like, and strong feelings of dislike appear. Then thoughts of things like revenge, or how do I get up on this person? How do I avoid this person? Avoiding is not really so bad. It's actually quite wise. But how do I harm this person? And these things come up, and this causes a lot of angst, a lot of anger, and also a lot of guilt in us. But it's important to look at it wisely and see that this is a really disadvantageous train of thought to take, and there is a time where we need to just put a stop to it. Sometimes in meditation we just observe things, but when it comes to these thoughts that arise in our mind, such as hatred, cruelty, or sense desire or greed, we have to take immediate action and recognize it for what it is, and immediately cut it off, annihilate it, like it's said by the Lord Buddha, just to annihilate it, not to tolerate these things. Because the more we fight these things, the better, the stronger we get at abandoning and eliminating such thoughts. The purer our mind becomes, the more clearer it becomes, and the more likely it becomes in the future for such thoughts to not arise. So the more we practice in this manner, the less likely we are to fall into these negative patterns of thought that bring us suffering, that keep us in so much vexation, in a fever of hatred, and it's quite a torturous way to live. And I can't imagine why anyone would enjoy living in such a manner. So when it came to this, I thought it was so important that I decided to look at some of the commentaries that were written on this matter. The commentaries being the Attakatha that I mentioned before. So the commentaries were written by ancient Theras, ancient monks of very high meditative attainments, maybe even arahants, and they had um, lot of insight on the human mind and on the path, and they had a lot of really good instructions to give us. And it's a good idea to look at the commentaries all the time when we are reading suttas. And I should have done this from the beginning, but I'm just getting used to this manner of contemplation and research. So when in this pertaining to this section, the ancient arahat, the arahant, the commentators, they gave 6 different types of evil and unwholesome mental conditions that could arise, that we need to be aware of before we go in, that we need to be alert for, and to immediately take action during our meditation, but also in our daily life. So the first one is called Jnativitaka. It's a thought concerning one's relatives or dear ones, and this may sound a bit harsh, like, why can I not think of my parents while I'm meditating? But it does bring about nice feelings, but also it can bring about feelings of fear and worry and attachment. And I'm sort of guilty of this as well, because sometimes I think of my parents, because I'm a monk now, and I can't take care of them, and well, not take care of them spiritually, but not financially, because I don't have any money, and I can't make any money, and I don't really want to, but it's not part of the path. So I always worry, like, are they going to be okay? Is their pension? Are they going to get enough of a pension to look after themselves? I've left them all my savings, but is it enough? I hope they invested wisely, so they'll be okay. Is my sister gonna be okay looking after them? Like, is my sister gonna be okay without me? And these things really, really sometimes overwhelm the mind. And these, it might seem quite strange to a Westerner to hear this, but this is part of Asian culture. Like, a child has to look after their parents. It's an unwritten law. That's why when you be a monk, you gotta ask permission from your parents. Even if you're a 50-year-old man, you gotta ask, Mom, can I be a monk, please? Because it's part of the deal. But when these thoughts arise, we need to understand that they do come from an unwholesome place, because they come from a place of attachment, not just love. Love is different from attachment. Love is pure, love is boundless. It doesn't want anything in return, whereas attachment does. Attachment wants you to think, this person needs to like me, this person needs to feel like I'm looking after them, or this person needs to know that I'm there, they need me. And things like ego drop into these are very subtle levels, and it may even be hard to understand or accept, but it's just the way the mind works. And also feelings of infatuation and worry. And the best thing we can do for our loved ones is to be a good person, and teach them how to be a good person, how to develop in the Dhamma, so that they are released from suffering, especially as a monk. But we cannot do that job if we are constantly worrying, constantly always being smoldering and hating ourselves and things like that. And just being worried all the time, it doesn't do anyone good, especially you and them as well. So when these thoughts arise, it's important to recognize it and cut it off, instead of constantly thinking over and over and over about it and proliferating endlessly. And the second one to watch out for is called Janapadavitaka. It's a thought concerning one's native land. So this, so it's like thoughts of national pride. This may be quite common in immigrants, because you keep thinking of the homeland a lot. And even in meditation, when the mind calms down a lot, is when these thoughts come up, like about your family members, about your country. And while it's nice to think about the country, also we need to understand that this is another attachment, that this is just a concept we build up in our mind, of country, of national pride, of flag, and this and that. um, the country is not what will give you freedom from suffering. It's the dhamma, it's your efforts. And it's like, even if you live in that country, sort of thinking of news, like, oh, the news is such a terrible thing for your mind. Is always thinking of the news, thinking of the elections, and who's gonna win the next election, what is this government doing now, they're so terrible, and this and that. Governments come and go, countries come and go. You might, in your next life, you may be born as your enemy country. You might be born, if you're Indian, next life you might be born as Chinese. So what's the point in hating China right now? Like, it's like that. Is that this thought is like a huge amount of delusion involved in this, and it's not good for the path. And it's important to eliminate it as soon as it comes up in our meditation. And the third one is Amaravitaka, and that's a thought or speculation concerning the deathless, namely Nibbana. So that's just speculating on what is Nibbana. It's like thinking, oh, is this Nibbana? Is this gonna give me Nibbana? What will Nibbana be like? Oh, it'll be so nice. Oh, it'll be so good. It's gonna be way better than this. And these thoughts, what they end up doing is, it brings up an sort of an ideological, I don't know how to say it. It's sort of like it just perverts your perception, and also it could lead to bigotry. You start thinking, oh, Nibbana is so good, like the Buddhist path is so amazing. All the other paths are horrible or stupid. Buddhists are really nice, but these Muslims, these Christians, they're not like us. It can bring up bigotry. So again, this is a thought that is rooted in ill will, in conceit, in arrogance. So even when Amaravitaka, even though wanting to have Nibbana is a good thing, it's a chanda, and even though why we meditate is because we want Nibbana and want the Amara, it is important not to let this go into unwholesome trains of thought and conceptually proliferate on it. And in our meditation, when we identify it, we need to quickly cut it off. And the fourth one is called Paranudita Patisammutta Vitaka. That is a thought concerning others' kindness. So that's it's really nice to think about other people's kindness towards you. So it's like a form of mudita in a way, but it can be unwholesome, because you can get too involved in worldly affection and in sentimentality and sensual attachment. It's like you're constantly, how can you be meditating when you think, oh, this person's so nice, he gave me this gift and then gave me this amount of food, or it was so good. And then again, you're lost in a train of thought that will take you nowhere, because just acknowledge it, and maybe cultivate a little, not little, cultivate mudita with sympathetic joy, and then just come back to whatever you're doing, just to be mindful, instead of constantly proliferating on this and thinking over and over and over again, because that's just going to lead us to attachment. All things change, and it's not good to be attached to things that change all the time. And the fifth one is quite a hard one. Is labha sakkara siloka patisamyutta vitaka. That's thoughts concerning gain, honor, and reputation. Yeah. So we we start thinking either about our jobs. It's like, oh, you thinking about all the honors that you could gain, the promotions, the bonuses, or education, my PhD, my this and my that, or even our meditation, thinking about how much honor and respect we will gain by being a virtuous person, by being even being an arahant. How much people would bow down to me if I'm an arahant, and thoughts like this. Um, these are thoughts that are rooted in delusion. These are the greed and arrogance, and it's just really not wholesome. It's not going to lead us to a good path. Um, so we need to be careful of them. And it's like spiritual maturism, spiritual materialism. It's like turning these spiritual like attainments into commodities that we want to own and that we want to wear around our shoulders and show off. This is quite a good term, spiritual materialism. It's something that's quite common in circles of spiritual seekers, and that's something we need to be careful of. That's why when we come across these thoughts, we need to just cut it off. And the sixth one is anavannati patisangyutta vitakka. That's a thought of not being despised or surpassed. So it's not wanting to, like, it's having an inferiority complex, like not wanting somebody else to, just being worried that someone else might do better than you, not just in worldly pursuits, because that's quite obvious, but also in spiritual pursuits. So, like worrying that maybe a friend who started meditating with you or after you, he seems to be doing so much better, he seems to be progressing so much more, and giving so much more dana, or is so good at practicing. It's like can feel a bit inferior. This is natural. It's just the way we are conditioned, and could be childhood, could be past life, could be just our kilesas, our natural tendencies. But it brings us a lot of suffering, and if we keep proliferating, if we keep just running with these things, it can bring us to a very bad place. It can bring us to even give up our practice, and have a lot of doubts. It can cause a lot of egotism and conceit, and it's because the self-hatred, it goes both ways. If you hate yourself and feel inferior, it's going to make you more reactive outward, in terms of arrogance, or just being hateful and resentful, and these things will not lead to spiritual growth. So when these thoughts come up, as these ancient commentators are elaborating, we should quickly alert to it and just cut it off. Just do not tolerate it, as the Lord Buddha says, because if we let these thoughts run more and more and more, it becomes habitualized. It becomes just the way we live all the time, and it can be a really miserable miserable way of living. So the practice of meditation is aimed at recognizing these trains of thought quickly and dealing with it straight away. And there is another sutta that we might come across later in the Majjima Nikaya called the Vitakka Santana Sutra, or the Dveda Vitakka Sutta, I forgot. And it's dealing with such thoughts when they come up, how to deal with them, how to cut them off. Like there are quite a few methods: cutting off and replacing them, and few others that I don't remember. But with this sutta, it's important to cut them off, because that is what leads to the ashramas from being cut off, and from nibbana from being achieved. So remember those 6 kinds of thoughts, and when they come up in your meditation, remember to deal with them. It's very important to know what these 6 are. And nearly, this is so insightful, these commentators, like these they come up a lot, not so much of a lot, but they come up, and it's important to deal with them. So the last one is the best way of dealing with the asavas, is what taints bhikkhus should be abandoned by developing. Here, a bhikkhu, reflecting wisely, develops the mindfulness enlightenment factor, which is supported by seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, and ripens in relinquishment. He develops the investigation of states of enlightenment factor, the energy enlightenment factor, the rapture enlightenment factor, the tranquility enlightenment factor, the concentration enlightenment factor, the equanimity enlightenment factor. which is supported by seclusion, dispassion, and cessation, and ripens in relinquishment. While taints, vexation, and fever might arise in one who does not develop these enlightenment factors, there are no taints, vexation, or fever in one who develops them. These are called the taints that should be abandoned by developing. Okay, so that's the taints to be abandoned by developing. And here is talking about the 7 enlightenment factors called the Bojjhanga Dhammas. These are part of the Satipatthana, but these are some things that come up in our that develop um, us in our meditation. They're factors that lead us to enlightenment, and I do not have time to go through in detail on them because we are running out of time. And I hope that we can get to them in our next session on next Sunday. So, in the meantime, keep in mind the 6 kind of thoughts that arise and what their roots are. Their roots are the kilesas, are the defilements, and how we should be very aware, very alert, and just cut them off. Do not tolerate them. And we'll come back to the enlightenment factors next time. It's the enlightenment factors are really the only way of permanently getting rid of them, because when we cut them off like that, what we do is weaken them and stamp them down. And the clarity of the mind that comes up after these horrible thoughts are gone, the peace of that and leads to a peace from the hindrances. It leads to a calmness of the mind, samadhi. But this samadhi is only temporary. This samadhi only stamps them down, just keeps them down for a little while, but they are underneath and they pop up. But the way we stop them from popping up is by uprooting them with wisdom, with the enlightenment factor. So we will get to that later. And thank you all for listening. And I hope you forgive me for skiving on the past 2 weeks, and I will try my best not to do that again. And I hope you all enjoy your practice in the Dhamma and stay diligent, stay relentless in your fight against Mara, against the Kilesas, and I hope you all succeed and find victory in the Dhamma and realize Nibbana. Sadhu, thank you.